Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Victoria Olska. I'm the president of Gabriel Al-Salem Foundation, which is an international organization with the purpose of creating connections, promoting excellence, and building sustainable future. We welcome you to our now monthly Consulting Without Borders live series, which we decided to call Perspectives. And here we would like to bring to you international consultants with great experience, experts, as well as our winners of the International Award for Excellence in Consulting, which we have been holding for over 10 years by now. Just explaining it a little bit more, Consulting Without Borders started in 2012 as a conference, which we held on February 1st, the birthday of Gabriel Al-Salem, in whose name our foundation is working. And we've had these conferences all over the world, including Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Ukraine, Turkey, Indonesia. And this year we decided that once a year is not enough. So we're launching a series of Consulting Without Borders live events, and they will be held on the first day of each month. And they will, as I explained already, feature prominent consultants with great experience in various areas of consulting, as well as other experts and business people. And we will be trying to cover a wide range of topics. You can post your comments as you're watching us live. You can post your comments in the comment section of whichever media you are using to watch us, and we will see them and we will be able to ask your questions, and our guest today will be answering the questions. Before we move on, though, I did want to say something that's very important that's happening in the world now. We cannot just move on with our event without talking about it, at least briefly. And this is, of course, the war in Ukraine. We are extremely, extremely concerned, and we are standing next to the Ukrainian people, our friends, colleagues, and relatives in Ukraine. And as a nonprofit organization, I would like to ask you to please consider a donation to the relief big organizations that are working in the area. And I will posting some links. It's the Red Cross, it's the UN humanitarian aid. There is a humanitarian crisis that's happening there now. And in order to help the people who are leaving the country, who are staying in the country, who are fighting for their freedom, please consider donating to the websites. I will put them on the slide here. This is the Red Cross. This is the UN humanitarian aid links. I will be also posting them on the banners later. And I know that for some of them, the governments of the countries from where you make a donation often make, they match the donation. So it's very valuable to do it. Thank you for that. And again, we are standing side by side with the Ukrainian people in their fight against this aggression. And we just hope there will be a resolution, and we just hope for the very best and for peace in that country. And now I would like to bring here our guest who will be talking about environmental consulting, because he is an environmental consultant and also environmental engineer. This is our very first episode, so we're still testing how things will be working out. So if you have any questions or concerns, if you have any suggestions, please let us know. But with this, I'm bringing here Ron Finch, who is joining us from Canada. Ron is a dear friend, a colleague, and from recently he is a board member of our foundation. Ron's been working for many years as environmental engineer and consultant all over the world. Welcome, Ron. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you for raising awareness and providing some information to people regarding our friends in Ukraine. I know there's many of us have colleagues and friends and family in the country, so it's important, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And also, I appreciate the opportunity to chat today. I know we have a number of loyal followers in our consulting group that are working with their own businesses or with consulting firms seeking out work that interests them. And I'm thankful for an opportunity to speak with you guys today and give a little bit of my experience with my career progression and then ending in some professional development discussions.
Ron, well, I know that you travel all over the world and you work in various countries and you also visit various countries. Where are you now? You are
So
in Canada, right?
that's right. So I'm in on Vancouver Island on the west coast of Canada. I'm actually not at home. I'm like many us consultants work on our laptops. I'm currently on the move, but near the city of Victoria. And at this time, it's a pleasure trip. I'm chasing waves on the west coast of Canada in the winter here.
Yeah, this is the beauty of being a consultant in many ways because you can work from different places. You don't necessarily have to sit in an office, which is a huge benefit. And of course, recently with the pandemic, a lot of us have been working remotely. But anyway, you can really work from any part of the world. And I just wanted to say that I'm very thankful to Ron because he's joining us at 5 a.m. his time. We're trying to time our events in such a manner so that our participants, the followers of our activities, the Consulting Without Border conference, and now the series can watch us because they're spread all over the world, 18 time zones. So I know that people are watching us from Central Asia, people are watching us even from Southeast Asia, Mongolia, Europe, and of course the United States and Canada as well. So we're just trying to accommodate everybody. So it's not in the middle of the night your time. So I'm in Florida on the east coast of the United States. For me, it's 8 a.m. For Ron, it's actually 5 a.m. So, yee,
I'm
Ron.
waiting. I'm waiting for you to send me the sun.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because in Canada, well, here we have sun in where you are. I've been there once. I know the area can be rainy and a little bit cloudy.
Oh yeah, I've had snow the last couple of days, so without a doubt. But and maybe on that note, I think variety in consulting, maybe not necessarily always world geography, but that's one of the things that consulting brings is an opportunity to work on a wider range of facilities, locations, types of projects, and that's one of the exciting things. And consulting can actually take you across the world, and that's what I have experienced. Currently working in Kazakhstan. Working in Kazakhstan has been a blessing for me for the last 4 years, carrying my subject matter expertise to help support a client, and working under the additional pressures of COVID, also leading me to have to adapt. So those are some of the things we wanted to touch base on. But maybe I'll start with just for those that haven't got a background for me, I'll give a quick overview. So
Right. Well, I just wanted to say that actually our dear colleague and friend Gulsum is saying hi from Almaty. So people are watching us over there. Thank you, Gulsum. Good to have you with us.
Salamatspa, Gulsum. And I guess maybe just as a quick start, I'll just give a bit of an education. So I was educated as a civil engineer with my first degree. and then continued to develop more of the environmental side of the civil engineering program that I'd started with in a Bachelor of Technology Environmental Engineering. And then that set me up for my sought-after career in environmental consulting, working primarily with contaminated sites and cleaning up the earth. That was my romantic view of what I wanted to do with my life. And of course, jumping into a consulting business or situation led me to have lots of different opportunities arise, many of which involved working for an owner or the proponent if it was a project, either as their designated representative or just representing them through contract work. I've worked for contractors and as a contractor, so those that are implementing the work on the ground. That's always where we would say the rubber hits the road or meets the road. So everything looks great on paper, but putting it into practice can always be a little bit more challenging. And often those roles will include site supervision. So day shift, night shift, 24/7, 365, rain or shine. So it can be very dynamic. And
Ron, how
sorry.
did you, I'm sorry to interrupt, just
Okay.
why did you decide to specifically go in the area of environmental consulting and become an environmental engineer? Was it something in your background, in your life, or growing experience that really prompted you to do so?
Yeah, I think I was always environmentally minded, and my family, provided me good exposure to some of the challenges that we were facing. And I also was provided an opportunity to play outside from an extracurricular perspective, climbing, skiing, snowboarding, playing outside in the mountains. And I guess one strong influence for me was I had teachers when I was in grade school, in primary school and secondary school, that would take us on trips into nature. And they had a very strong understanding of our responsibility to leave a place without tracks, essentially, or pack in your garbage, or pack in and pack out your garbage, those sorts of things. So those were the fundamentals. And then when I entered university, the civil engineering program that I took had options that were related to environment, and those I enjoyed. Those are types of things as wastewater treatment. So that's designing facilities and plants and processes, landfill design, contaminated sites, geotechnical work, working with the earth and understanding, the elements and the chemistry and microbiology. So I just kind of kept going that direction and did some research and determined that, again, romantically cleaning up the earth was what I wanted to try to focus on, and sought the second program as a means to bridge there. I was working in the water bottling industry initially, which was gainful employment and was a good experience, but not exactly the direction I was headed.
And so was that your first job after you completed your studies?
So the first, the water bottling was the after my first degree, between first and second, and then continued while I was studying. So like many people do, I balanced full-time employment and studying, and actually had multiple roles and jobs as time went on. To help support getting through school. But once I finished that second degree, the Bachelor of Technology Environmental Engineering, I was well suited to jump right into the environmental consulting industry, and at that point started working for major oil and gas clients, mining, government projects, port construction, all sorts of different opportunities came up through consulting.
Right. And I know that you were planning to talk a little bit about that and how to go about actually getting into projects for individual consultants or the companies like yours, right?
Yeah, so yeah, that's good. So I guess one of the things is the if you have an opportunity to work for an established consulting firm, that can help you build your resume of experience in advance of, for instance, starting your own business, like I did later on down the line. But initially, working with the consulting with an environmental consultancy provided a broad variety of opportunities. And ultimately, if you seek out opportunities that you're interested in, and you work, to support projects that will give you exposure to things that you're interested in, then with time, those opportunities will come to you. And sometimes you'll find an opportunity and a benefit you weren't expecting. So I'll give you an example. I was working as an engineer. I was working towards what I thought to be, the career path I wanted to go on, but the consulting firm had some work on a major port construction project for the government of Canada, and part of this project included wildlife salvage. So there were some fish salvages that were required, and the biological division of the company required some support. And So I went out and 1 or 2 days counting fish, identifying fish, capturing them, and then freeing them into the open ocean seemed like enough. Like I'd checked the box and had the experience. But the work continued and continued, and days turned into weeks, turned into months. And at first I was a little bit frustrated. To be honest, I didn't necessarily immediately see that value. And since it wasn't the career path I thought I was on or headed down, I kind of didn't see it for the opportunity it was. As that project continued, and I did work on that port construction project for about 3.5 years, maybe even longer, but 3.5 very intense years of construction phase. I started to understand that there was a lot more going on these sorts of projects. As an environmental consultant, we were working for the owner, doing their assurance work and construction environmental monitoring, as well as managing all their permitting, both the compliance reporting as well as new permits that are required. And ultimately, that 6 weeks of salvaging fish at the start of the project allowed me to start to better understand the scope of the work that was planned. Started working with the engineering team for the owner that was on site as well as off site, and really got to learn how marine construction is conducted. And ultimately, by the end of that period, had been involved in marine mammal monitoring, like I mentioned, some fish salvaging and fish mitigation projects, including restoration work. Had done shorebird monitoring, and then worked with our biologists who were conducting more advanced monitoring in the region to compile the information in annual reports. And we also did work with benthic invertebrates. So all these things that I didn't necessarily seek out, but came to me as an opportunity, laid the foundation for my ability to be a more effective consultant for my clients and in future opportunities.
Yeah, when I was reading your background, the one that you sent me, is just amazing because there are just so many areas where you have been working, and it's just really fascinating that there is just such a broad range of subjects, right? Like, or the areas where you can actually apply your skills, right? So I was reading it's a marine biology, restoration projects, habitat compensation, downstream oil and gas projects. So we can talk about that as well, because I've already been asking you this question You have worked for oil and gas companies, and as an environmentalist, as a person who supports the environment, and how do you justify for yourself, maybe you can talk about that a little bit later. How do you justify for yourself working for an oil company? And maybe I know that you're still working for this big project in Kazakhstan, and you're back and forth.
Yeah, so I guess early on, what I found was that when I started working as a consultant and I was getting involved in interesting work and complex work, typically the clients were your larger industries that have higher environmental impacts, pollution challenges, issues with spills. Which I also got interested in emergency management, which I can segue into in a second. But ultimately, what I found was ultimately all my work was for those same companies, and they were my clients. And sometimes our recommendations weren't necessarily either understood or maybe not 100% implemented as well as they could have been. And so I found that as time passed, I saw value in working with the proponent or with the client, the oil and gas company, the even the contractor that's executing work, and you have a larger impact in achieving the overall goals. So whether it's habitat loss, so trying to reduce the amount of disturbance that projects have, community impacts, so not even related to environment directly, but more to the social side, how to draw all of these threads together. That really happens as an owner's representative. And moving to work for the companies, that gives you an opportunity to sit closer to decision makers, to provide them the support, visibility, understanding that they need to make decisions which will be more proactive and preventative instead of reactive. Often as an environmental consultant, although I mentioned at the start, romantically, I wanted to clean up the earth, and that's one of the approaches I took. But that approach solves or helps to respond to a problem from the past. There's more value in prevention, planning, and more effective execution of whatever it is, whether it's a routine operation or a construction project which has a finite timeline and a start and an end period. All circumstances might be a little bit different, but with the intent of trying to reduce the amount of energy or waste or habitat loss, improve the performance of the company or of the project at achieving their desired objectives. You can gain more leverage by working directly with the team.
Okay, yeah, this is a great point, that working inside the company, you can actually influence, of course, the decision making and how these things related to the environment actually take place. Can you talk a little bit about your work in Kazakhstan? Because I know we have a lot of people who will be watching us from Kazakhstan, and that's where you and I met. And I just want to bring up here a photograph, and Ron agreed for me to add it. So this is how I met Ron. He arrived with my husband Boni from Indonesia. They came together on a flight. They met actually on the flight, and I was just picking up Boni at the Almaty airport, and here he was, Ron, and I didn't know him, of course, at that time, but Ron can talk about his hobbies later, but he's an avid surfer, traveling all over the world, catching waves, and he was surfing in Bali, and that's how he came with his huge surfboard, which we had to then go and place in the storage, remember, because you were traveling to Western Kazakhstan, and you still had a couple of days in Almaty, so you didn't want to carry it around. So we just stored it in the baggage area for a couple of days, and then we just went into the city and had a good time. And that's how I met Ron. And I had no idea he was environmental engineer. He was doing all this great work all over, and we became friends. And then Ron started supporting our conference, Consulting Without Borders. He joined it as a speaker and as a sponsor. And now he is the director, one of the directors of our foundation. And I'm just very happy to have you with us, Ron. Thank you so much. Your experience is just amazing. So yeah, that's. I think I'm getting some more comments. Yeah, so we can talk about Kazakhstan. Maybe you can just say how you got there and about your work, which is still ongoing.
Sure. So I've through my work on major capital projects, so we would probably call most of the larger ones giga projects, multi-billion-dollar large developments. I developed a network of colleagues, same as we've developed here with the Gabriel Al-Salem Foundation, right, of consulting professionals, and they reached out to me and requested that I review the opportunity they had available. So I was gainfully employed at the time, busy, had clients that kept my schedule busy, but they presented me with the opportunity to work on one of the more challenging components of their project, which is very large. They call it the future growth project for Tengiz Chevroil, which is a oil company in Kazakhstan, which is a partnership between the national oil company, Kazmunai Gas, and a number of other proponents, including Chevron. And Chevron is the organization that I'd worked with previously, consulted to, and also was a contractor to. And they described a project which had many challenges, which challenges are always good. That helps drive us to grow as consultants. There was a large phase of spending coming up, so it was going to be busy. And my particular role was to work on mitigating or understanding first what they call the project area of influence, and then work on mitigating some of the unintended consequences that come from high levels of activity where we don't have direct control as a company. So as a owner, if you have a contract and you sign an agreement with what Tengiz Chevroil calls business partners or your contractors, there's only so much that you can do to influence their operations. On site, you have direct control. There's rules and regulations. Off site, you can write some things into agreements where you have expectations around, transportation of personnel have to meet certain criteria. Your you're basically you're trying to extend the obligations and commitments that you have as a project to the business partners organization and the way they support you offsite. So it's a little bit more challenging, and entering the Tengiz region, which is in Atrau Oblast on the Caspian Sea. We already had established essentially a community of business partners nearby, and the role was to map and help influence change. And it's not much different, actually, to be honest, than any of the work we ever do as an environmental consultant, because most times commitments are made or laws exist, and what our role is often to help educate and support all parties involved, including the public understanding what's going on, the regulators and government understanding the business needs and the constraints and the permitting needs, your contractors and your ownership team understanding where your risks lie, where you're you're in a decent situation, and where you need to focus your attention. and then of course managing your consultants and your assurance. So for me, it kind of pulled a lot of what I'd already done outside of Kazakhstan to help support a very, very large project. So it was an exciting
Right.
opportunity.
And you were saying that, well, we just talked about it, that as someone working inside the company as an environmental specialist or advisor, you can actually make certain improvements as a decision maker inside the company. If it's possible, can you give us an example of working with Tengiz Chevroil, if it's possible? I understand some information might not be for the public, but if
No,
just
I would.
general terms.
Yeah, I would say just generally, you have very, very intelligent, experienced professionals in all levels of the organizations that are working towards a common goal. And in the very, very large projects, part of what our role is to help, you know, remind and increase the not just the awareness, but the understanding over like roles and responsibilities associated with certain roles and positions, and understanding a big project usually has an environmental assessment, and there's a list of commitments, and government signs off on those as part of the environmental assessment process. And that's no different really anywhere you are in the world. And with this project that I was working on with Tengiz Chevroil, there was international financing, which required international financing corporation performance standards be applied, which are a standard approach to managing environment and social impacts associated with large projects and spending. And the lenders want some due diligence done to ensure that that those requirements are being met. And so our role primarily, and it would be the same, in Canada when I've worked on big projects, it is very, very similar. It's to provide the information and help educate at the level that the information or the user would need. So I'll give you an example. So on a day-to-day basis, we might be interacting with people that are conducting work in the field, manual work or trades type work. Well, the message to them around reducing material use and recycling and waste segregation would be different than the message that needs to be given to the foreman or the superintendent or the contracts advisors, the other team members across an organization. And that includes both inside your own organization and in the contractor's organization. So, really the main role is to help identify the risks and then build into the planning phase of the process the right understanding, expectations, and controls, essentially, to ensure that that you're meeting those desired objectives. So I don't think it isn't actually that much different than anywhere else. It's just in the project scenario in Kazakhstan, it was just a very large initiative, all being executed at the same time. It was one of the largest investments that organization has ever made at one time, and ultimately, it actually was also, it's occurred during a time when COVID has added additional constraints and restrictions on personnel movement, et cetera, and those would all have to be managed. So.
Right. And as I know, for the past couple of years, specifically in the COVID conditions, you actually changed the direction in which you've been involved in that project, right? And you just had
That's
to
right.
adapt. And that's also interesting because consultants very often they have to adapt to particular situations, not necessarily just COVID, but anything, right? So if you can maybe tell us
Yeah,
about that.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, and that's another good example. So with the role that I had in the ELC team more broadly, one of the things that comes from that role was an understanding of all the different levels of the organization. So the contracts group, the people that are responsible for managing the contractors, the safety representatives, the medical representatives, the industrial relations, the groups that work to ensure the workers have been communicated and are trained and have all the information that they need to conduct their work safely, etc. So couple that with previous experience in emergency management. In fact, I've studied formally emergency management. I was well suited to help support the organization with this, this daunting challenge of an emerging pandemic, and with Tengiz Chevroil and Chevron implement the incident command system, ICS system, which is pretty common, and it's used worldwide. And that was something that we implemented on this particular event. And early on, I got involved with the medical department and have been working since, supporting the overall operations, the production operations for the existing oil and gas field and facilities, as well as for the future growth project that I had been working on. And again, working in alignment with with existing IFC commitments and the intent to maintain a healthy and safe workforce so that we could continue to progress work, albeit as everyone experienced, we did have a reduction in progress because we had a reduction in numbers of people to accommodate the COVID
Right.
pandemic.
Well, fascinating work in Kazakhstan. Gulsum is asking, in how many countries did you work apart from Kazakhstan? And yeah, the following question is, how did different cultural experiences impacted you as in your development as a professional in the area of environment?
So those are great questions. So I guess the first question, I'm only at four countries internationally. So not many. Most of my work has been in Canada and US, and then now working in Kazakhstan was the largest bulk outside of Canada. But from a cultural perspective and working with with understanding and communicating across different communities and cultures, my experience in Canada was primarily coming from in consultation and engagement with First Nations. So in Canada, our Indigenous people or Aboriginal people are often referred to as First Nations or First People. And we have numerous nations, thousands really, spread across the country. And each of those nations does have right and title as recognized by the UN over the lands that were considered their traditional territory lands. And so in many of my prior work experience, often you're dealing with environmental spills, contamination, just a proponent doing work, whether it's a rail operator or a utility provider in and around streams. All of these have triggers that require consultation with First Nations. And I was fortunate to have elders within communities provide me some guidance and early lessons, and just I guess partially through chance and partially through demonstrated experience, having worked with a number of nations and on nation land, that gave me some unique perspective, which I feel like arriving in Kazakhstan or working in Africa, where you have definitely a different culture than what I was exposed to as a youth, and more, I've learned through my personal travels around the world that all people are people. That it really is just a matter of finding means to communicate effectively, and to listen, to hear what concerns exist, or questions there might be, because it's not just a matter of delivering a message. It's about a conversation, which is much what we're trying to do here, right? Um,
Right.
so that, I would say, would be the largest piece. And then, of course, learning a language is important, especially as a visitor. In Kazakhstan, I'm a visitor, and have tried to make the best effort I can at learning some Kazakh and Russian, so that I can, at a minimum, introduce
To make a
and
connection, yeah.
make a
It's
connection with people. That's right, as a touch point. And it would be the same approach, personally, I use when I'm traveling, and I've been very fortunate to visit many places outside of work as well. It helps develop that initial, yeah, like you say, that initial connection. And then after that, really, to be honest, it's to me, again, the work is very much similar. There are some different challenges where regulatory maturity might be at a different level. And that's part of why the lender obligations for IFC, International Financing Corporation standards, are included as a requirement. It's not to say that there's not already rules and regulations in many jurisdictions, but it's a matter of also learning them. So one of the very first things you have to do is not make an assumption, but go and investigate, and in my case, work to have documents translated, and not only have them translated, but discuss them, because a direct word translation isn't always going to translate the intended meanings. And those are the sorts of things that, as a consultant working in a cultural, multilingual environment, you really have to um, dedicate some time to, and be open to. um, it it it's a bit of a journey, but once you get into it, it's a very valuable part.
So outside of Kazakhstan, and which other countries did you go to in addition, well, to just working in Canada, of course, and the United States?
So I hadn't visited Chad or Mozambique, but those would be the other two countries that I had projects I worked
Okay.
on. I wasn't on the ground in either country. One was an early works project for oil and gas development, and natural gas development. That was in Mozambique. And in Chad, it was actually related to oil as well, oil production, and working with their challenges. There was some regulatory requirements that existed, but there was a need for some consulting support from a firm that I work with, a partner firm, I guess I would say, in Canada. And so we were aiding them remotely, essentially, with the on-site workers, part of this other partner consulting firm.
Well, yeah, as I understand, you worked in a few countries, but you also travel a lot more than your work assignments, take you to. So here is hello from Bali, Indonesia, from Boni, who is there now, and I know you go to Bali often, and that's where we also spend some time together, because Ron is an avid, surfer, as I already said, and you're also, what other hobbies do you have? I know I was trying to reach you in the past
Oh,
couple of days, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, Ron is not accessible. His phone doesn't work. I was worried, but it seems that Ron was just taking his time. Doing
I was off the grid. Yeah.
You're off
Um,
the grid. Well, that's fantastic. So, yeah, what did you do? You're now in Canada, so what kind of
So,
activities?
so it just so happens that when I was out of cell phone reception, I was off surfing this trip. But my main interests are the mountains and the ocean, essentially. So surfing, climbing, and snow sports. Snowboarding would probably be my top three. But also languages, percussion. I'm a drummer, playing
Wow,
music.
I didn't know
Um,
that.
Artist. I like to paint. I don't know. I have all sorts of stuff going on, I suppose. But um, that's all a balance, right? So most of my time, like I said before, is really spent, working on site, usually on projects. Being mobile, to some extent, and then work hard, play harder.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, you're just a great example of how actually being a consultant can bring this life to work balance, right? You work hard, but then you also have the opportunities to be off the grid and just go and enjoy things that you like, doing. That's great. That's really wonderful.
And that's obviously a rosy side of it, given that I've been in a situation. The work in Kazakhstan is a rotational job. Many jobs have different rotations if you are working in that kind of situation. It just so happens that it's a very good rotation, meaning there's lots of time for you to on your days off, because it's split to 28-28. Not all rotations are equal, and not all jobs are either. And one thing I can say, from years in consulting, I did have lean times when I'm working more on proposals to get work than doing work which pays bills. And that was something that I was hoping to chat about maybe a little bit quickly here. If it's okay, if I can change the gear a little bit. But
Yes, I just wanted
um,
to say there is a comment from Gulsum. She
oh,
really appreciates you sharing your experience of working in other countries, because many consultants, younger consultants, they're considering doing international work. So your tips are very, very helpful. Thank you for that.
no problem. I'm happy. Yeah, and really, there's just to kind of tie that one closed out. Really, the only way to know is to go. You really, you kind of have to jump in, and those opportunities exist. And that's really, it's a good segue to what I wanted to chat about here. I can speak from an environmental consultancy perspective, but regardless of your subject matter expertise or SME, there, as a consultant, you're always looking for opportunities, right? And for me, I kind of split the opportunities into kind of four major groups. There's government, so working um, with government. So whether you're under contract to government or working on a project basis, and as an owner's representative, as we've talked about quite a bit, as a contractor's representative, and then finally in an NGO. And depending on your field and um, what activity is ongoing, you can actually find opportunities in all of these different areas. And so it's important not to close your mind down. And for instance, in Canada, for government work, there's a website where they post the government contracts that are seeking proposals. And as a consultant, you can screen through those with some keywords and find those that are your subject matter expertise would benefit, and your experience, and try to seek some of those out. And maybe I initially started monitoring them before I started looking for work. And then, of course, the next problem is the juggle of, you can't win too much work at the same time, because you still have to achieve it all. And one of the things that I've found successful for myself, as an independent consultant, working in small teams with other, um, consultants with similar backgrounds and experience, we often work together to both win work as well as to share the load of delivering work, and developing those trusted partners to help each other manage the work effectively is important. And that saves from having to amalgamate all into one company necessarily, and work on your little niches, and then help each other out. And then the only other thing I would say is from an international perspective, can be a little bit more challenging because, of course, there's work visas, and there's processes in all countries to get approval for whether it's a work permit directly or a residential permit, so that you have access to the country as well as the work visa. So there can be a few more challenges. That doesn't mean that the opportunities aren't there. And there's a few ways to approach that work. So one is through your existing networks, and through the work that you currently do, taking that work to other regions as a subject matter expert. Another way is to seek project experience, since projects often require large numbers of people in more compressed timelines, making it more difficult for the local workforce and companies to all provide the services. That's a good opportunity. That's a good time and a good place to look for an opportunity. And there's a number of agencies that typically work to help support the company or proponents in finding the work. And one of the strategies that I find helpful is, if you find a project you're interested in working around or on, you can do some research to find out which companies have been awarded work, and seek out those companies. Right, you have awareness of the type of work they are doing, where they're busy, and you can look to try to get engaged, through some detective work. So that's the best I can offer there. I mean, myself, right? I am always working diligently on the work I have in hand, but I'm also looking down the line to some extent, and my colleagues and network tend to look out for one another, but ultimately searching those opportunities can always be helpful.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, Valentina, also from Kazakhstan, is asking, are you a member of CMC Canada? If not, why? And yes, is it helpful? CMC is Certified Management Consultants organization in Canada.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Valentina. I'm not actually. I've been learning about CMC through the foundation. Of course, the last meetup that we had in February, there was actually a very good update provided on the foundation, or the CMC Kazakhstan group, and so definitely have interest in Canada. I'm a professional engineer and a member of the Professional Engineering Association, so that's my main association. For me, that's required as part of my practice. My company, of course, your local chamber of commerce, we call it in Canada, which is like the group of businesses in a given region. They help advertise and improve awareness amongst local businesses, what businesses there are, and what talent and offerings they have, as well as work almost as a local interest group to work together. But no, I haven't sought that CMC that opportunity out, and I should. And for a number of reasons. One, it's well organized. I know that because I did some some follow up reading here in February. And two, it would also be interesting to see how, because having the opportunity to be working in Central Asia and have colleagues, I could find out whether we've got very parallel systems, just out of interest myself as well.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I'm very glad that you learned about CMC and that maybe you will consider joining the organization.
Yeah, was it
as a consultant?
What was the gentleman's name who gave Sorry, we'll have to dig back, but it was a very good overview, and then from there, I was of course
Well,
Googling.
actually, at our conference on February 1st, Valentina was the one who was talking about
Oh, it's Valentina.
she
Okay.
was talking about CMC Kazakhstan because, well, as an organization, they were extremely helpful in even creating the foundation and our events Consulting Without Borders, because that all started back in 2010 when we lost Gabriel. And then, of course, CMC Kazakhstan has been doing amazing work in connecting consultants in creating this community of consultants who are helping each other, who are working together. And they're also very instrumental in the global scene, because they are very active members of CMC Global, which is this worldwide consulting organization. So, yep.
I'll have to spend a little bit more time looking into the organization for sure. And Valentina, I'd be interested in linking back in with you after. I mean, I ultimately for me, I see it as a professional development opportunity, not only just from connections, but staying current. And I know that that was an important part of what CMC was helping offer, right? The members connection to formal training. There was also, essentially well, it's I call it a center of practice, right? It seemed like there was a little bit of a center of practice, a sharing venue as well there. So
Right. And of course, Valentina and Gulsum both, they also reminded me that it was Roman Vakulchuk, who is also our member, I mean, the member of CMC Kazakhstan, and our dear friend who is participating in our events. He also talked about CMC. So when you refer to
yeah, I think
gentlemen, that
that
was
was it.
him. Although Valentina
Okay,
also talked about Roman as well, because
that's right.
he's a
So Valentina
member.
had slides, and then Roman was
Right,
maybe
right.
mentioning it. So yeah, I mean, it obviously the organization sounds like it's doing great work, and is providing lots of opportunities. And the other thing is, it's not just Kazakhstan. It sounds like CMC Kazakhstan is actually working in a number of Central Asian countries regionally, right? Or
Correct. Yeah, correct. That's very true. Well, we have a few minutes left, and I know that you also plan to talk a little bit about professional development as a
sure,
consultant.
Sure, I'll try to keep it pretty quick, but just maybe for interest, as a professional engineer, and it kind of segues from Valentina, the professional organization that I'm a part of. There's actually annual professional development training hours required, so 80 hours annually, which is quite a few. And there's different forms that you can seek professional development, but the whole intention is to keep current, right? Stay knowledgeable, um, aware of changes, whether it's regulatory, best available technology, um, which changes rapidly, especially in our current space that we're in right now. With IT changes, et cetera. And so, it's important that you seek out opportunities that one will benefit your and complement your experience and your desired area of expertise and which way you're going, as well as information that's also going to push you a little bit to continue to grow and change. And so for those 80 hours annually that I'm required, and they actually they assess them on a 3-year rolling average. There's a few different forms of professional development that are considered acceptable. So formal schooling, such as courses, or a 4-credit type program, those would be considered formal. Conferences can also be considered formal. I myself do some guest lecturing. Here we are. The meetups that we're doing would be very much in alignment with professional development, objectives. And then there's some less formal examples, such as reading industry journals, or doing literature review, or keeping up with current trends through associations and information that's distributed routinely. So those are some examples. But the big thing is that that's a lot of time. When I look at 80 hours, for a 40 hour work week, as they would probably call it. I mean, that's 2 weeks of your personal time to be, if your company doesn't support that effort, which I encourage all companies to invest in their employees, or as a consultant or independent consultant, meaning you're working, just as you're in a small group as yourself as a company. You need to make sure you've set aside money and time to allow you to continue to grow professionally, I would say. And the only other thing I would mention is that I find it very helpful, and with my colleagues and staff, I always encourage people to fill out a formal professional development plan. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's very simple. Outlines your career goals and interests. Helps you map what you think the areas that you would like to seek some additional knowledge in. Look at whether you can seek that experience internally within your organization as well, or with your client. If there's something that you have interest in, seek that out also as a work type experience. But and then identify any of the scholastic opportunities like courses or programs or conferences which would lead you in that direction. And maybe you won't be able to get to all of them every year, but start ticking them off, and that's essentially the way I move forward. And so professional development is definitely an important part of it. And CMC was clearly helping people with professional development options, right? So that's a good example for those in Kazakhstan to look to. And your local universities. Doesn't mean you have to take an entire degree. If they have one course you're interested in, almost all institutions will take your money, as long as you identify that it's a topic that you want to stay on current with, and seek those opportunities.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much for all your insight. Thank you for sharing your experience as a consultant. I just want to say, when we were texting on WhatsApp preparing for the event, I noticed that the slogan that you have there on WhatsApp, you can put this little blurb, and it says "Living the Dream." And I thought, oh wow, this is great. So you're living your dream in your work, in your travels, in doing things that you love. And I really hope that other consultants or anyone working could also live their dream and be happy in doing what they're doing. With this, I don't see any more questions. We had a hello from St. Petersburg, Russia, from Victoria, and Gulsum is also saying thank you. Thank you from all of us. This was our great first episode, Consulting Without Borders live perspectives, and we talked about environmental consulting. Our guest is Ron Finch from Canada, who is an environmental engineer and environmental consultant working in various countries. And here is Anya joining us from the Netherlands. I know she has an exam coming up, so she didn't have a lot of time probably watching us, but here she is. And she is also studying sustainable development. So what you're doing could be something that she will be doing in the future if she chooses to. And Valentina is saying, okay, and one more question. What do you enjoy the most in your profession?
I would say, actually, personally, I quite enjoy mentoring and working with my own teams and the contractor teams, those people that are all engaged, whether consultants, contractors, etc., to talk through issues and share kind of my experiences and what others have taught me, because a lot of this is learned over time through trial and error. So I would say that's probably one of my favorite things. And in Kazakhstan, in particular, one of the main reasons we were invited to come and support the project one of our key objectives was to help with knowledge transfer, mentoring, and supporting the talented national staff who have now fully taken over and are managing all the work that we built together. So, that's the dream. So I would say that's my favorite part.
Great. Thank you so much. I guess on this note, we'll end our first episode, Consulting Without Borders Live Perspectives. And please stay tuned for our next event. I will be on April 1st. We won't change the date, but our guest speaker will be announced a little bit later. Thank you all, and we're wishing you all the very best wherever you are. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.